Hello everybody. Today's video is all about Ibsen's A Doll's House and is aimed at students that are studying the play as part of their A-level. I want to talk about two things specifically in this video. The concept of separate spheres, which is to do with the roles of men and women at the time the play was written, but also the significance of money, because when you look at lots of the past essay questions for A Doll's House, money and finance often come up a lot of the time, and can be significant in terms of a theme or a symbol in the play. So those are the two things I want to talk about in this video. I'm going to start by talking about this concept, and it's almost like a societal concept of separate spheres. So at the time the play was written, men, as symbolized here by the blue circle, were very much occupiers of the world of business, finance, work, and the respectability that that came from, as well as the money that one got from their work. And Helmer, therefore, is representative of this figure who is very much to do with the world of finance, business, and he takes his job very, very seriously. We have to remember that it's Christmas time, and yet he is spending an awful lot of time working over the festive period, so he's a bit of a workaholic. In pink, and apologies here for the stereotypical colours, but the pink here represents the sphere of a woman at the time, who often had the role of a nurturer, caregiver, as Americans would say, homemaker or housewife, and really their domain would be the home. And of course, it looks good on the man to have a housewife, because while you did all the good stuff in your place of work and earned all the money and got your respectability from that, you had a wife at home who was looking after your kids, who was cooking for you, who was cleaning for you, and you didn't have to worry about it. So at the time this play was written, society had, for many years, had this very binary structure. And these circles are very much separate. They're not talking to each other. They're not overlapping. So at the time, it was believed that men and women occupy essentially different spheres, and they therefore had completely different priorities. So we have a clear binary. And in this kind of society, in a society that loves labels and categorizing people and putting them into boxes and onto shelves, this is a very simple way to look at society. And it made people very, very comfortable because if you were a man, you knew what your responsibility was. And if you were a woman, you know what your responsibility was at the time. So when we talk about separate spheres, we talk about what each respective gender had in mind in terms of how to be a man, how to be a woman, and that kind of thing. What Ibsen is doing in this play is he is conflating these roles, and therefore we have more of a Venn diagram, a bit like the MasterCard logo. We have an overlap. And even though at the time, you can keep the labels on the left and the right hand side from the previous slide, the fact that Nora behaves the way she does, such as taking the loan out, earning money in secret in order to pay back those installments, as well as essentially leaving the house at the end of the play, challenges these two separate spheres. And this is what can make society, I suppose, panic a little bit because it is challenging what everybody had thought. It does not, therefore, fit into the neat societal box that we had seen in the previous slide. So, by getting a loan and repaying it in secret, which gives her freedom, she breaks the constraints of these spheres. And as you can see, these spheres have very clear boundaries. So, by overlapping here, she is breaking from the constraint of this pink circle. She is challenging societal views about what women are. That's why you have the quote, "It was almost like being a man," which she says with some positivity when she tells Mrs. Lind about earning money in secret. She's had a taste of how things are for men. And in her view, they're probably a bit better than they are for women. So that's an important quote which challenges this kind of binary structure. So by taking out that loan, she signs herself into a man's world, and she essentially, challenges Helmer at the end by saying, when he says to her, "You are first and foremost a wife and mother," which is kind of this idea, this kind of separate idea, she says instead, "Before, no, I am actually a human being." And that is bringing into question this kind of Venn diagram. So she is constantly dissenting against this idea of men and women occupying separate spheres. And that's why we get the phrase new woman, because a new woman was a woman who essentially dissented from this societal binary structure. Okay. And she walks out of that home. There isn't much more of a clear symbol of a woman who is rejecting her womanly duties here. So in A Doll's House, Ibsen is getting Nora to challenge this binary structure. And that's why I always say to students that characters are devices. We often think of similes and metaphors and so on as being devices, but characters are also devices. They are constructions by which a writer can use as a mouthpiece to push into the limelight a particular injustice or a particular discussion point. And that's why often this play is called a feminist play, because Ibsen is clearly looking at how society and how the institution of marriage constricts women. And of course, the metaphor of the house, the setting of the house, is a metaphor for that constriction and for that constraint. So when we talk about separate spheres, we talk about these kind of very set, defined roles, which Ibsen is challenging by having his female protagonist acting this way and do the things that she does. Okay. Now, part of that behavior, part of the way that she breaks free from these constrictions of these spheres is through money and through the business regarding loans and things. So the second half of this video is to do with the significance of money, because money is never that far away in this play. So in total, in today's money, Nora borrowed about £250 from Krogstad in order to take Helmer to Italy. He was having a bit of a mental breakdown, and the idea was that if he goes to a warmer climate and essentially has a holiday, he's going to recover from that. So Krogstad, therefore, is a loan shark, and he blackmails Nora because of the issues with the money, of course. Even though she has, proudly paid back these installments, he is going to blackmail her because he is worried that he's going to lose his job at the bank because of Helmer now being his manager. And that is, in fact, what happens. And being sacked by Helmer then acts as a catalyst for getting this letter in the post, which then tells Helmer everything that Nora has done. So Krogstad, of course, represents a antagonistic presence in this play, which breaks the harmony of the happy family home that we're led to believe exists at the beginning. As we have already seen, money and finance already sits within the masculine sphere. And we think of coverture, for example, very heavily, restrictions on women and money, not being able to earn their own money, having to give the husband any inheritance, not being able to get a mortgage in your name, not being able to get a loan in your name, all these kind of things. So this was a society of coverture. And because money and finance sat within the masculine sphere, as we've already discussed in this video. Helmer's ego and his own sense of masculinity is then inherently tied up with finance. And at the time, Victorian men often had respectability from their employment, but also the money that they earned. And Helmer and Dr. Rank in this play represent that kind of middle class character who have got status through the work that they have done. Whereas Krogstad, of course, wants to share that platform with them, but is having difficulty because of his past fraudulent actions. So Krogstad is also motivated by wanting more money. In terms of Nora, she uses her father's signature, which she signs, of course, 3 days after his death, because he is a man, and she could not sign the loan with Nora Helmer because she's a woman. So the reason why Nora got her father or forged her father's signature on this IOU was simply because he was male. The error that she made is that she forged the signature and dated the IOU 3 days after her father died, and Krogstad in Act 1 cross-examines her and interrogates her and gets her to admit this fraudulent action, this forgery. If we think of the setting, one of the few places in the play that is actually referenced is the office, which is a doorway off the central room where the play takes place. you think about it, Nora rarely, if ever, goes into that office. And again, that's symbolic because that office represents the masculine sphere of money and business and finance. So no wonder she doesn't go into that room because that's where Halmer does all of his work. And that is the man's domain, not a woman's. So settings as well are significant there in terms of telling the audience where what a man's preoccupation is and what a woman's is. As we already said, Nora is able to work in secret to pay off the loan, and she takes pride in telling Mrs. Lynde about quarterly interest and instalments, suggesting that she's trying to distance herself from the nabl of child, which is what Mrs. Lynde called her, which is very patronising. And she uses this secret of the loan in order to assert her power, I suppose, or her capabilities of keeping secrets. So money is never that far away in this play. But also we need to think about how characters are motivated by wanting more money because they don't have enough of it right now. So we know in Mrs. Lynde's backstory about a decade ago that she married for money and is now a widow looking for work. In other words, she wants money. That's the main reason why we work. And she can get a slightly better paying job, such as being working in the bank, because she's a widow. So female widows could actually do jobs which married mothers couldn't do, interestingly. We know that Krogstad wants to keep his job to care for his children, which is, normal. That's a good moral intention because he wants to distance himself from his past criminal actions, and he wants to climb the respectability ladder and aspire to be the kind of man that Halmer is in terms of occupations and finance. Nora wants more money. If you think of the beginning of the play, she keeps asking Halmer for money to buy Christmas presents. So she is a spender, and he is a saver, but she wants more money to buy on Christmas presents. And she also wants money because she needs to afford this holiday to Italy for Halmer. And that's where the loan comes from. So she is motivated by money, and the only way she could think of getting any was by getting a loan and forging her father's signature. We know that the previous Christmas to this, the Halmers had a difficult Christmas because Halmer was unemployed, but they are now looking forward to a more lavish and more comfortable festive season because he is now working. So in that opening dialogue, or that duologue between Mrs. Lynde and Nora, one of the things that she says is how marvellous it is to be earning proper money and have things so easy, which is quite tactless when you're dealing with Mrs. Lynde, who has had a rough time of it for the last decade or so. Finally, even the minor character of Anne-Marie is also motivated by money. We know that she gave up her own child to work as Nora's nanny, and she's now Nora's children's nanny. So this nanny has been in the family for at least 2 generations. But in order to do that, Anne-Marie has had to sacrifice her own child in order to earn her own money. And again, it's Ibsen's way of making a political comment here that it seems that the only way women can financially survive in this world of this play is by sacrificing something of themselves in order to earn. So even the minor character of Anne-Marie has had to make a difficult decision if she wants to be able to survive financially. So there we have the main points about how money is significant in the play. And that's why I believe the examiner, particularly for section B of the political and social protest writing paper, has asked a lot of questions in the last 10 years or so about money, about finance, about economies, and how that might link to Nora's oppression or her freedom and so on. So hopefully this video has helped in terms of revising and studying why money is so important in this play. Okay, so thank you very much for watching, and good luck in your exam and in your studies and revision. Thank you.